Well, hello everyone in personal finance for healthcare professionals. Here we are smack dab in the middle of the week for Module 7. We've only got one more module to go, so we're definitely in the home stretch. I want to talk a little bit about completing this course and just some general other updates in the course before we head into our final week. The first one, more about grading and the grade book. I mean, all the grades are in there as of last module, Module 6, so all your stuff is in there. If you notice that you have an assignment that's graded with only a single point, that usually means I can't find the assignment. It's not in the Dropbox. So if you want the points, please complete the assignment. I do accept late work, but there is a deduction on points, but it's better than having a 0. So please do look at that. So I like to put just a single point grade in there to call your attention to it. Maybe it's a problem on my end. I didn't see it in the Dropbox, or whatever, maybe technical issues may have happened. But let's get that worked out now before Module 8. Because the way the course works, many of you have taken numerous courses here at Mercy College. The course will close next week, Sunday at midnight, and it's kind of sealed at that point. And then I have to get grades in pretty quickly. So I'd rather kind of, if we got a missing assignment or something I've messed up, I'd like to get that fixed before we rush around and try to get everything figured out in the last minute of next week. So please take a look, make sure everything looks good with your grades. And again, if you want to submit something and you got a single point in there, again, I'm happy to grade that. And again, there's going to be a little deduction, but it's still worth it for you to do it. Okay, there's a little bit about late work. Again, I'm really super impressed with your summary papers. A lot of you are doing the papers over the concept map, so very interesting. Great detail in a lot of those papers. Again, there's some great concept maps as well for a couple of you that are still doing that like the concept maps. So. But interesting that most of you are favoring the papers and a pretty long form of papers. So great job overall with both the summary papers or the concept maps. Great job with that. All right, a couple other things too. I was talking to another student and then kind of looking at a callback to Module 5, and we talked about home ownership and all that piece. In there, and there was a part in there that we don't have, and I just some personal reflection, if you will, on this with home ownership. Again, I think all of you have the same feel about home ownership versus renting, and it really depends. It's not a fast rule that you got to own a home. It really depends on your situation, your life situation, how long you're going to stay in an area, whether you're going to be transient and move around a lot. It really can depend. So that's what I was hoping to come out of that particular module. But if you do happen to head towards home ownership, and probably someday, you'll be in a spot where home ownership makes sense to you, as you go through that wonderful process to buy a home, filling out the mortgage documentation, with your lender, and they're going to ask for all kinds of verification about your income and all this other stuff. But once you go through that and you get to the point where you're closing, you're getting ready to close on your home, one of the things that you can require, and most likely the realtor that's working with you will tell you this, and that's to order a home inspection. And I think, again, I want to tell you my perspectives on home inspection. They can be incredibly valuable, or they can be kind of worthless. So what you want to do is make sure, in my opinion, I think home inspection is definitely worth it. Unless you are very, you could be very knowledgeable about home construction and home mechanicals and heating and air conditioning and all of that. If you are, then great. You probably don't need it. You can walk around the home. You can point out those things that might be an issue with the home. I know one of you said in your discussions that, negotiate. Absolutely. You're going to find something wrong with that home, and, you can negotiate that off the price of the home. And, my recommendation is that you do that because it's something you're going to have to fix. But in my case, I just recently bought a home, and my realtor recommended She said, well, here's a couple of companies you can use that I typically use. You can use anybody you want, but here's a couple of companies that I recommend. This company does a really great, it does a really thorough and great job. They're more expensive. I looked at the two and I decided, oh, what the heck, I'll go with the more thorough and expensive one. And boy, I'm really glad that I did. So even though they were a little bit more expensive, when I looked at the parameters of the report they were going to give me, there was a lot more detail that they were promising me on the front end. And it was a much more thorough inspection. So not all home inspections are created equal. If you kind of get what you pay for in a way. Now there's some minimum standards they all have to meet, like in my particular state in Ohio. But once those minimum standards are met, there's a lot of latitude. So in my case, the home inspector actually discovered some pretty major things with the home, completely invisible to the current homeowner. So they weren't trying to hide anything from me. They simply didn't know. And one of those was radon, and you think like, oh, that's kind of a joke, radon. Well, I have kind of a radiation background, if you will, in my profession. So I know a little bit about the hazards of, both, ionizing and particulate radiation. So, I'm like, all right, let's do the radon thing. And this home came back with actually some very high radon levels. And, the EPA sets those levels, and the levels my home was at was like, basically get it fixed immediately and, or get out of the house. It was that high. So in negotiating, the homeowners were like, wow, we don't know. And a lot of that radon accumulates in the basement. Like, we never knew this. Radon's obviously, invisible and all that stuff. You can't smell it. You can't see it. It's, completely silent. But it causes, significant lung cancer in the United States. It's kind of no joke. So, but part of that was, that they had to put a radon mitigation system in the home that kind of funnels it out. And now, then they go back in, they test the radon levels, and they're like near zero now. So, but had I not gotten the, the extra, if you will, in the home inspection, that radon wasn't going to be a part of it. So again, something to think about. It's when you get home inspection done, it's just like anything, buyer beware. I don't think a lot of homeowners, I like to think positive of people. I don't think they're out to necessarily deceive people when they're selling their home. In my case, the individual selling the home had no clue, and I'm sure they didn't, because they spent a lot of family time in that basement. They lived there for 20 years. Yeah, so I think, but then again, you never know. There might be people that try to cover some things up with plaster or whatever, and that's where I think a good home inspection is to your advantage. And even when you buy a used vehicle as well, having that mechanic go over that, unless you have that skill set. So enough of that. I kind of get off my soapbox, but yeah, if you're paying for something, you have the right to have someone who has the expertise to look at, especially like a large purchase like a home, or even a purchase like a used car. All right, so we've got that. I'll get off my soapbox on that, but again, I wanted to kind of tie that back into Module 5 and some discussions I was having earlier this week with a student. All right, so we've got that. Now let me talk a little bit about how we're going to finish this course. Talked about late work. Next week should be relatively easy for you guys. So that's our final week in the course. We'll have reading, presentations, and a quiz, and you have your personal finance declaration. The personal finance declaration is not meant to be hard. There's a template provided within the module. You can fill in the template. There's plenty of instructions on how to do that in there. But I just want to emphasize that to please make this your own. A lot of students will just summarize some of the information that they've heard, that we've studied over the past 8 weeks. That's fine. But you don't necessarily, if you're not necessarily in lockstep with, some of the recommendations, that's okay. So don't feel like you have to just regurgitate, kind of the rules of thumb that we've learned over the past 8 weeks. Only if they fit for you and apply to you. This personal finance declaration is just a way for you to pause, think about your own life, which we try to do about in hopefully throughout this course, really think about your own life and how this stuff that you're learning is going to apply to your life. And, and we mentioned it before, it's very cliched in this business, if you will, but most people spend more time planning their vacation than they do their financial life. You sweat all the details out about going to Disney World and where you're going to be that day, and you're going to spend so much time there, and here's where you're going to stay, and you plan that all out, and it's fun. It is fun planning your vacation. But this stuff may not be so fun. But spending a few hours every year just pausing and thinking about, hey, am I on the right direction? Am I doing things right? Do I know my credit scores? Credit scores are so much more easily accessible now for you to monitor. One of my banks now has continuous monitoring of my credit scores with no impact to the score. So I'm able to see all 3 scores pretty easily. We did talk about how to get that from the official sanctioned government website out there in the course. So, but just, having that general awareness, taking some time every year just to, are we in the right direction? Here's what we're going to do. Here's our major objectives for the next year. Buy a new car or save X amount. Hey, you may not get there. You may say, I always set these lofty goals for myself, but let's say you set a lofty goal, you're going to save, X amount of dollars. And, invariably I never get there. I never get to X amount. But by having that number out there or that thing or concept out there, at least I'm heading in the right direction. And I don't beat myself up that, geez, I didn't reach this particular level of savings or, principal reduction on a loan or whatnot. So, but it gets you in the right direction, and I think it helps with your perspective and helps avoiding, maybe some major missteps and mistakes. And again, we're all going to have those from time to time. I'm going to tell you about one of my mistakes next week. So I always love talking about that one. So, all right, guys, that's pretty much it for this one. A little bit long this week, a little over 10 minutes. Again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. You have my cell phone number. A couple of you have reached out through text message. Again, as a reminder, it's on the cover on the landing page. You'll see my cell phone number there. If you have a quick question, feel free to text me. All right, guys, have a great week, and I'll check in with you in our last week of the course. Thanks.